Hello and welcome back to another episode of the HR Wellbeing Dialogue. We have a special guest with us today, Tanuka Bairagi. I'll invite her to introduce herself, but in the meanwhile, a quick update on what we are doing with this program. The HR Wellbeing Dialogues is a conversation with leading HR professionals, and the genesis of this is really a conversation we had a few months ago with MTHR around what are the well-being issues that HR professionals themselves deal with. And while they are focused on the well-being of the employees of the organization, it is also well known that they have been under tremendous stress and pressure. So what is it that we can learn, share with each other in the community? This was sort of the genesis. And as part of that, we are doing three things. One is the well-being dialogue that we are in right now. In addition to this, we also have a ongoing survey on well-being of HR professionals that we are conducting. We invite all of you to join that survey, which is a nationwide survey of HR professionals. And the third thing that we are doing is convening leaders from HR and other allied fields in different cities. We have had roundtable meetings in Hyderabad, Pune, and Bangalore, and we're doing one in Bombay very soon. The idea is to take voices from all levels, leadership level, HR professionals, and informal sources to inform us about what is the state of well-being of HR professionals, what are the best practices people are using, and then how can organizations and individuals use that to support their own HR professionals. With that background, let me welcome Tanuka again to this program. And maybe Tanuka, what we can do is we can quickly start with a background of your professional trajectory, how you got started in the field of HR, and what have you seen changing in the context of well-being over the span of your career.
Okay, so I hope everyone can hear me. And hi, everyone, and thanks for joining live. If you have joined, I know it's a busy work week, but you still made time. So thank you for that. So I'll start with my current role. I'm currently heading the HR for Asia Pacific region for a company called Nuance Communications, which is a Microsoft company now. So under my scope, I have 5 countries. And I am also the site leader for India business. So people who are from, GCC space would know what the site leadership means. So that's my role in short. So since Ashwin asked me to talk about my career journey, let me start with when I started. So I have 22 years of experience. So the year I passed out was not a great year to pass out in, and this was a big recession year, I would say. And of course, as you can imagine, 22 years ago, we did not have many foreign MNCs in India. So the roles were very limited. And of course, for freshers, there were absolutely no role, and especially in HR. So that's how it started, rocky start. But when I look back, I was thinking that every time you are in this kind of difficult situation, that kind of shapes you as a person, makes you more resilient, makes you more flexible, and also open to new challenges. So I certainly owe a lot to that period when it was tough. So of course, I started with some contractual roles, but I was lucky to get hired by a large IT MNC, an Indian company, but that was a very good role, I would say, because although the company was big, but they were starting a new arm. So it was kind of a startup experience in a big environment. So got to work with very senior leaders like founder and the president of the organization. And it was a very business facing role. So sitting in those business meetings with clients and, understanding that. So that was the start. I could also set up the HR function and department in that organization because it was a new arm. So I had to do that. And not only for India, I also had done for Europe and Americas. So that was a good experience. And then I took on some international roles. Now these roles were again very different in nature. So one of the roles I played was with a Fortune 100 company very large again. They had global footprint. So this role was actually heading the talent management for their technical function, which was their R&D wing, basically the innovation and R&D wing. And that was working closely with CTO, with premier institutes like IIT, ISC, and also foreign universities like MIT, Purdue. Setting up labs there, also hiring key talent, and having programs ready for leadership pipeline for next few years. And then I took another very different role than what I had played. That was HR technology role. Again, I had no clue about it, but I learned the ropes I took the role. So, and I am conscious of the fact this is not a career discussion, but just trying to drive home the point that when you take on new roles, when you're kind of in that journey where new things are thrown at you, it does give you some anxiety, and it does give you some stress. How do you manage that change? And this topic is all about that. So that's my whole point. So yeah, but then as I kind of in summary, all the roles kind of have been very meaningful and fruitful. It's just you should know how to maneuver through those new challenges. Yeah,
Great. Great. Thank you, Tanuka. I think that gives us a fairly sort of broad view of how things have evolved in your career. But the question, we are also interested in is, since you started and where you are today in a senior position, how has organizational focus on well-being also changed over these
sure,
years?
sure. Of course. And especially, during pandemic, things changed so much. But I'll just talk about otherwise too. I think few years ago, we did not hear so much about well-being and wellness. We did not have too many webinars about it. And the fact that we are talking about it today, shows the change in the focus. So this was never a core subject. I would say this was very, very, nice to do thing, I would say. But now organizations are very aware that this is very this topic is so close to the business results. You think of the impact on productivity with the absenteeism for physical health, mental health, or be it your the so basically the business results. And you think of anything to do with business, your people need to be in tip top shape. So I think wellness and well-being is something that the organizations are consciously thinking about, and they are tracking it. And then the entire ecosystem that has kind of come in, that has now we see around this well-being and wellness. You have partners who help you with that, and the organizations at the leadership level having the tone at the top about the importance of this topic. So there has been a huge shift in nice to do to this is the core for business results. That's what I see.
Great. Yeah, I think very well said. I think there is a increased focus now. Like, I read a recent article saying that this is one of the top three priorities at the leadership level, and
Yeah,
across the board there is a sensitization that this is in a way a competitive advantage for the future. So
absolutely. And just sorry
yeah,
to cut you, but just on that, if you think of even from the cost perspective, one is of course the business result, but even the insurance premium cost, right? If your employees are not in good shape, of course, next year you're going to pay more insurance premium than this year because of your, utilization will go up. So from all perspectives, actually, it makes sense. And I was reading a report which was about, last year on an average, um, employees actually lost 38 hours of or sorry 38 days, which is like almost 2 months of working year, due to absenteeism. So this is certainly something that the organizations have been very focused on.
yeah. Just a related question there. I know that during COVID, there was a significant emphasis on well-being because it was a crisis mode. Do you see that that focus still continues, or we probably will go back to the way things were in the past?
Very much. Now, Ashwin, I'll talk about my organization. Okay. So, what happened during COVID is that the increased, I would say, recognition of the fact that employees are much more beyond their work, right? So they have life beyond work, they have responsibilities beyond work, and it was very, very important to give that flexibility. I think that was something that my organization really took very seriously. And we also got surprise wellness days off by our CEO, who suddenly used to kind of announce that this day everybody kind of take this time to de-stress, be with family, and so on. So I think that was very important. And you asked the question whether things have changed from then to now. I can talk about that. We have actually not called the employees back to office, because we understand that the flexibility that people got then, that really helped them manage things in much, much better way, rather than the times when they had to come to work every day. So we have not even mandated, say, 2 days or 3 days. We've not given any guidelines. So everybody can, it's completely voluntary. So they can decide when they want to come to office and when they want to work from home. So that's one. Then other things that we had introduced during COVID, we have not taken anything back. And of course, that is going to continue. So I don't see anything dropping. Like, for example, I'll talk about some of the things we introduced during COVID. Now, one of the things was, of course, there were a lot of resources available to our employees to kind of take help from. But one of the things was Calm app. So CALM, Calm app. Now, this app is a meditation come sleep app. It really helped people during COVID when they were at home, when stress levels were at a different level, to kind of take help of this technology. That, and we got very, very good feedback about that. That continues. Another thing we introduced during COVID was availability to the specialist doctors, like even say lung specialists, heart specialists, 24 by 7. So employees and their families, even from the remotest area of India, could actually contact doctors at any time, and they were given support. And then there were other facilities also alongside, and we continued that. And a lot of things that we actually introduced during COVID, like, for example, employee assistance program, that was there even prior to COVID. During COVID, of course, the utilization went up. We also saw that people were not only dealing with personal losses and challenges, but even losing a loved one at workplace, a colleague. So we had organized some group sessions. We did a lot of new things which we had not done prior to this, but we continue with those things even now. So other things that we did was, it was not just restricted to employees. Of course, like many other organizations, we took care of the community as well. We built hospital. We actually built a proper full-fledged hospital. And then we donated a lot of oxygen concentrators and did a lot of things to help the community. And we are continuing with our focus on healthcare and building or rather taking accessible and good healthcare facilities to remote areas in India. So yeah, in short, COVID gave us opportunity to think differently, and we are continuing with those learnings.
Great. And many of the things that you mentioned, Tanuka, are also sort of need a lot of commitment from the leadership, going forward. So, what are the kind of sort of mobilization of resources, or even commitment that the leadership does? How do you make sure that it is communicated throughout the organization and continues to go down or up both sides?
That's always a challenge, right? Where things are conceptualized at a certain level, and how do you make sure that that is actually communicated and cascaded down to the end level. We do actually take help of lot of communication channels, lots. So there is, of course, business side cascade. There's cascade at the regional level, and we are a very matrix organization. So of course, we have the functional channels, we have the regional channels, as well as we take help of technology. And being a tech company, of course, there are a lot of this tools as well, where things people can actually get the latest and greatest in communication. So we try to kind of take help of technology as much as possible. We also have employee led groups and resource groups. So for example, if it is to do with wellness, we would kind of have the champions for those causes, and they would take it back to their team. So upwards, downwards, sideways, we try to kind of tackle all kind of communication through these formal and informal channels.
Great. Thank you. I think that gives a good perspective of what the organization doing, and how you are sort of making sure that the momentum is kept on. Shifting gears a little bit, because this entire dialogue is about well-being of HR professionals. Your quick thoughts on what is really happening in three levels, let's say. One is, from a leader's perspective, from your perspective, how are you seeing this as an issue or a non-issue, whatever it may be, right? And the second level is how are organizations supporting their own HR professionals, right? So that's the second piece. And then third, as an individual, how are you coping with this situation? Feel free to mix up these three angles, but it'll be great to hear your view.
Yeah, so great question. So let me start with self. That's easiest. So I would be again very transparent and honest that pre-COVID, I don't think I was so focused about my balanced and holistic well-being, I would say, right? Of course, some days I would just get up and think about my physical health. Some days I would get up and think about my mental health, but I wouldn't be really thinking about all the parameters so holistically. So I think COVID, what it made me do was it made me really consciously put down my thoughts about what are my focus areas, and how, when do I say I'm really it's a balanced wellness for me. So so there are four blocks that I've created, and of course these are very common ones, but then I have put goals for each of those. So of course the mental side of it, the physical side of it, the social side of it, and the financial side of it. So let me start with the physical side, right? So I certainly the activity levels were not adequate, so I started doing that, and I could see the effect of that or impact of that on my thought process, on my day-to-day energy levels, and all of that. It was all something that I used to read, but I used to not practice it myself. So I think that helped. The balanced eating helped, eating consciously and more healthy, staying hydrated, sleeping well. I think all these parameters I really started tracking, and I started being very conscious of under physical. Then coming to mental, of course, it was a very difficult phase, I would say, because as a leader and as a leader of the organization, plus as a HR leader and leader for my own team, during COVID, every day was a new day. Every day, I mean, when in the morning you get up during COVID, you didn't know what you what you would expect, what would happen during the day, right? So we were dealing with so many different kind of things, and at that time, I thought my own mental well-being was very, very important. Um, if I have to really take care of, employees breaking down at work, asking me that, Tanuka, how can we help our colleagues? How do we do this? I didn't have all the answers, but I had to be in a control, state where I could actually give them confidence that, we are thinking about it and we will come back. So of course, I had to actually coordinate a lot with my global leadership, and because things were very grave and serious in India. So at that time, I think what helped me was, I did take help of, the apps for meditation, became part of the meditation circles. It was very important for me at that time, but, I continued. And beyond that, also having those trusted people around you with whom you can, open up, you can discuss. I think that's also very, very important. And finally, I also see the spiritual part of it in the mental side, because when you are more connected to yourself, your own thoughts, when you're aware of your own thoughts about, even if a negative thought comes, how do you take care of it at the germination level itself, so that it doesn't impact your other positive thoughts. So it's very important to kind of clean those and being conscious of that. So that was something that I did around my mental well-being side, and I continue to do. And then coming to the social aspect, of course all of us wear so many hats, right? I'm mother of two kids, one in 10th grader, one a 6th grader, so of course hands are full. And then a daughter to two sides of parents. So all of that, those responsibilities, your other friends, social, even your work friends, all of that. So right, it's very important to kind of manage that piece. And then finally the financial side of it, so that you're not stressed after you get retired. So of course, spending more time with the CA. So that's all of that. I kind of, I had set some goals for myself, and I could make progress, some conscious progress in those areas. Now, coming back to as a leader, and as a leader, and I'll combine as a leader, and also the other question was, I think, as a as for HR professionals, what did we do? So I think again, COVID and otherwise also, I think HR professionals have to take on so much on day-to-day basis. It's not just the well-being, but even this is the time of economic, macroeconomic situations, some changes that happen in the organization, right? So you kind of get into those discussions, you listen to employees, their side of the story, and it's very difficult, right? So it's very important for the HR professionals to be in a very good shape, when it comes to mental well-being and physical well-being. So we do have this, we're of course a very tightly connected team. So that helps, having that trust. So that the my team can just come to me and they can just talk to me openly about things, and the trust and empowerment, letting them make decision on the spot if they have to make decision also helps, because then they are not in an environment where they're thinking, oh my god, if I make this decision, what happens, right? So I think creating that culture is very important for any leader. And as a leader of the organization, I think everybody looks up to you for, that you have the answer for everything. So again, being available and open about what you have and what you do not have, and what you can get to them, I think that's being transparent is very important, and being authentic. I think all these things have helped me, and I continue to follow those.
Great, great. Now, I think a couple of very important points in terms of also maybe you might not have all the answers, right? So I think that's a good place to start. There are a couple of follow-on questions from our viewers right now. One is around the current environment, right? Um, there's a sense of dread across the board. I think the Western world is really in the midst of a recession. India is holding off, but it's a matter of time that something might happen, right? And some organizations more than others. So the question here from Manoj is around how do you focus on employee well-being during, I mean, I won't say layoffs, but any kind of economic sort of downturn, right? It might not be layoffs. You might decide that this year we might not do a reasonable increment. How do you focus on well-being? I think if you can share some tips.
See, I personally think that your well-being agenda should not be focused around a certain event. It should be a regular thing, and it should be like we do it's very very regular for us. Like every month there'll be two events, and there'll be so something that organization knows, or rather employees know, that as an organization you're a caring organization, right? The moment you start doing things which are event based, I don't think the people are going to trust you so much, right? So even in good times, not just in difficult times, I think it's very important to take care of employees, right? And that has helped us. So it's a truth, and nobody can actually deny the fact that there is an impact of the macroeconomic situations in all the companies, and especially tech organizations, right? So how do you make sure that even during these times, how are you treating your employees with utmost respect, giving them everything that's due to them, and also making sure that even beyond they're leaving the organization, how are you helping them? So I think what we have seen, our own experience, people even while leaving have thanked us for the experience they have got while they were here, and thanked us for the support and care they're going to get post their exit. I think it's very important to for employees to see that we genuinely care. I think that's what I would say.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a valid point. Making it part of the culture rather than sort of an intervention when
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah.
Um, it looks like we have a lot of questions around some of the things that you mentioned around flexibility. So let
Okay.
me take it now. I think it is a real challenge now that organizations are either hybrid or coming back to work or flexibility, all of that. So Brilliant is asking every time there is a conversation about flexibility, the question from managers is, will this impact productivity?
I
Right?
can see how the discussion is now moving towards productivity than the
Yes.
wellness. Yes, yeah, and of course, that's a
Yeah.
question that all of us have. So, in our case, now we are a R&D organization, so probably this is little more easier for us than the organizations which are more operations and where you have to have people manning the shifts and taking care of it's more transactional. Probably their things are a little different, but in our case it has always been very outcome based, right? So flexibility was never a challenge. In fact, what we saw is even now we are seeing that the output has really gone up. It has not, in our case it has not really gone down. And I think employees have, over the time, they have really understood that we are not saying it for the sake of saying it. This is what we really mean. So we are actually seeing more more engagement from our employees side, in terms of, or rather I would say more ownership and more making sure that the things are done on time. And here I would also like to mention that we are actually in the middle of integration with Microsoft. We are a Microsoft company now, so there's a huge amount of change that's happening across us, right? Be it the product strategy, be it the ox, everything is changing around us, right? So during change, again, there's a huge amount of anxiety, and how do you manage change is a big topic. So I think going back to the flexibility question, we are not seeing negative impact of productivity. It could be because of our business model.
Sure. I think Vipul has a interesting comment. Maybe wellness linked productivity. Maybe it's the other way around. It's
Correct.
you create that environment and then hopefully productivity goes up. But this debate is on. I think flexi work is a little bit of a challenge given, like you said, if it's a sales
Yeah.
focused organization or target based organization.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, there is a very pointed question. I will avoid it because it could get a little bit controversial. Controversial. We'll come back to it if we have time in the hour that we have. Just going back to your, what you mentioned about your practices, about the four elements of your well-being. Is this something that is also sort of adopted by your HR team, other members in the HR team, or is this sort of a personal sort of choice that you have made?
So I'm very happy to say my whole team is very healthy. Yeah, I can actually say that.
Okay.
Yeah. So this actually, the four box thing was actually introduced to us in the organization by one of the partners we worked with. This was just before COVID, and it was so timely. And then everybody had this on their desk. So we had given this, as a reminder to them. It's still at my desk in office. So, and then I did share my story of how I'm actually following it, how I'm incorporating it in my day to day, and not just restricted to my team, but anybody in my, whoever was talking to me. I think all that we can do is we can let people know what we are doing, and try to kind of influence them to also lead a healthy life. So yeah, fortunately I have great players in my team. And then we keep doing some physical sports events, and other things. Basically it's to take care of all the things, emotional, physical, social, all of that. So my team is following it. Yes.
Great. Just a follow-up question there. Um, when uh, when you create a plan like this for your team, for yourself, or for others, There's obviously some people who are maybe not in a good space, right? Whether it is personal situation or it could be professional. Is there a mechanism that you have seen evolve where there is a support structure for them at work, which focuses on their well-being, or is it largely handled by sort of external experts?
Good question. So, again, it depends on the intervention and help they need, right? If it is very, psychiatric kind of help, if they need, of course, that's not something that we would do because we are not experts in that. But we certainly have those support channels, and we do encourage. A lot of times, the employees are not willing to take those support for whatever reason, right? So I think it's our responsibility to help them and lead them to that. So we do that, but beyond that, I think there are a lot of these circles where people can actually take help from. So it's not always external. I would say it depends on what nature of intervention is required.
Sure. Great. So just one level deeper on this. So, people who are either entering the field of HR or who are just building up a career in HR, what would you recommend to them to focus on, while focusing on their work? How can they also focus on themselves?
One thing I will say is don't get overwhelmed, because I think it's very easy to get, and things are just kind of, they come to us from all directions, right? So while you're working on something, something will be told to you, oh, this is urgent, something else will come to you, some personal requirement will come to you, and things just keep piling on, right? So what happens is, if we just kind of at one time we try to manage so many different things, it never gets done, right? So it's very, very important to prioritize. It's very important to list down the things that we have on hand, and then kind of having very clear and attainable timelines for each of that. So what I do is, in the morning I do list down the things that I have to do during the day, and of course it's mix of professional, personal, and other things. And it's very important to not do multitasking. It never helps, right? It only creates stress, and it just compounds everything. So it's very important to focus on one thing at a time. Easier said than done, because our mind goes in multiple directions, even when we are reading something, when we are listening to something. But consciously try to just do one thing at a time, consciously just focus on one thing at a time. Because there are also a lot of studies which show that how the productivity goes down, how our output and our what we are doing, everything goes down, the result of it goes down when we multitask. So it doesn't help, in short. And for coming back to our original thought, it takes about 18, there's some study about 18 minutes or something. So it's that's important. So basically, in short, listing down what needs to be done, prioritizing, doing one thing at a time, not getting overwhelmed. And at the end of the day, there will for sure be few things which will not be done. You will not find time to complete it. Shift them to the next day. Sleep peacefully. Don't keep thinking about it, because in the night, otherwise, in the sleep, you will get those dreams. So it's also important to kind of have a good closure of the day. And relax, because sleep, as I said, in physical, when I was talking about my physical element, sleep is very important for our body and mind recovery, right? So please do not underestimate the importance of it.
Great. So prioritizing, setting boundaries, adequate sleep, and sort of managing the workload in an efficient manner.
Yes.
I also remember that you and I, we were both at this retreat where we had a gathering of HR professionals. Do you see, given that most of our work is now from home, sort of very carefully curated or engineered gatherings like this are useful and helpful for organizations focused on well-being?
Very, very much, very much. One thing I want to say, Ashwin, that whenever we try these virtual events. And of course, ours is, as I told you, is a voluntary return to work. So people don't need to come to office, so most of our events are virtual. We have seen very low attendance, right? So for whatever reason, we talk about it many days in advance. We let people know this is coming, and still there's low attendance, although we get experts and everybody. So the camps will really help. And for HR people, I can certainly say for me, it was very useful. Like, I think that was the first one I attended after the pandemic, and I could connect with the stalwarts in the industry, but even make a lot of good friends. And most of the people I met were like first time I met them. So it was very useful for me, learning from them, understanding what they are doing. So in short, yes, yes, and yes.
So I hope Vipul ji is paying attention and we get a chance very soon again to redo this. Um, so you mentioned virtual events, right? And we also work with a lot of organizations, and it is a constant challenge. And then it leads to frustration for the team because we organize
Correct.
everything
Correct.
and nobody shows up, right? And one of the I mean, couple of things that we have learned, but want to get your views. So mental health support or well-being support is has been delivered in the same way for many years, right? There's an expert comes and then do a
Mhm.
lecture, and then we are supposed to change our life. That for some reason is obviously not going to is not working and will not work, right? So are there any instances where you saw that real change happened, maybe through a workshop like this, maybe some other engagement in your organization? And second, related to that is, one of the ways we push this engagement is we structure this as a skill building exercise rather than a benefit. So, for
Hmm.
example, we say we will train managers to become well-being champions, and there is a
Nice.
process, there is a course, there is a certification. We see that a lot more people want to come in because now they see this as a skill that I
Hmm.
can use for others rather
Very
than a
nice.
benefit that is for me. Have you seen other examples like this?
I have not, but we have tried coaching managers as coaches, right? So it's very similar to that, right? So you penetrate better through the managers, and managers develop the skill because this is the skill that they can take anywhere and they can help so many more people. So that really works. And I am very, this is very novel idea, and I had not heard about it. And but I think this is a very good idea where the managers also become part of this whole solution. Yeah, so that's very nice. In your other question about has any intervention changed? No, I can't really think of, because all those interventions, as you rightly said, were like expert came, spoke about it, but some part of the employees benefited where they continued to follow that. And then like during Women's Day we would get some doctors and who would, so there was more awareness, but no, nothing that is like that has changed or transformed the way.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the feeling that we get is whenever we introduce something for employees, it is seen as for a particular group of employees.
Correct.
It doesn't mean So the related question is, how do we encourage leaders to participate in such kind of. One example you gave is that you yourself communicated to the team and for other members. But how do you make it a constant sort of communication piece, and is that a challenge?
That is always a challenge, right? Because they would have their own business deliverables. And this having all the leaders at the same level when it comes to having this tone at the top where everybody's talking about the importance of well-being, the importance of how important it is to be in good shape. um, you can never have like a consistent thing across the organization. Having said that, I think rewarding the right behaviors and identifying champions who are really very passionate about this cause is very important, right? So we do have some people who are like very enthusiastic when it comes to health. So sharing their stories, letting them take it back to their teams and talking about what the organization is doing and what they can do, and all of that. So I think having those champions for specific causes, I think has helped us. And that's the only way I think we can actually penetrate, because just leaving it to the leaders may not help. It has to be at all levels.
Yeah. No, I think that's a theme that you have referred to in the past as well. Like, how do you make it owned by the smaller groups or by employees? Like you said, some employee groups that are driving adoption.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And, as we enter 2023 now, I think it's already 2 months are over. But anything new that you're planning to do at your organization and also at a personal level, any specific well-being goals for this year?
No, I don't believe in the New Year resolutions. I believe in consistency. So no, I have not added anything. The only thing that I want is that I should continue to remain on my goals. In terms of the organization, as I said, Ashwin, we are in the middle of this transition, right? So very soon we are going to be on the benefits plan of Microsoft. We're going to be in basically the Microsoft wellness and well-being ecosystem. So we are not introducing anything this year because of this. So so once we integrate, then basically the new things will come our way. So we're not yeah, it's going to confuse our employees more if we introduce new things now. Yeah, so.
Right, right. No, great. I think we have lots of comments going on, and also there is a parallel conversation going on between the commentators. So we'll encourage that. One sort of remark made by Brilliant is very interesting. Whether using an external partner for well-being is more helpful than driving it internally.
I think it's combination of both that works. If you leave it 100% on external partners, it will never work because they will never know the dynamics of the organization. They will never know the informal channels inside, and they will never know how can we maximize the output and the results of the intervention, right? At the same time, if we have only internal people driving it, they will not have the expertise. I think it's very important to have a good task team or project team which will have both internal and external to have the best results.
Right, right, right. Great. So let me just scroll up and see what else are people asking about. There is one question which is very pointed by Pramodji, but I'll just rephrase it.
Mm-hmm.
Do does focus on well-being end up in many cases just being sort of talk and not really implemented, right? And that is a true sentiment that employees voice sometimes. Organization to bolta rehta hai,
Mm.
but we are seeing a different world. How do you see that playing out, or what are your suggestions on overcoming that kind of tension?
So, from whose point of view? Is it the employee thinking that the organization is just kind of, they're not actually meaning what they're saying?
Yes, yes, yes.
I think it all again depends on the organization, right? It again boils down to the trust in the leadership, again boils down to the culture, again boils down to what have you been doing with the employees throughout the year, and that actually creates that. So we don't hear that from our employees. Um, so yeah, in short, basically it's just the culture and the tone at the top, and we see a lot of trust at the senior leadership by employees. I think that tone at the top and having that respect and trust is important.
Right. Great. I think this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm sure we can continue with this in this thread, for many more minutes. But to wrap up the conversation, if you look at what we touched upon as a organizational priority and your emphasis on organizations focusing on building a culture of well-being rather than doing it in an episodic or an intervention based approach. I think that's ultimately building trust, what you just mentioned,
Correct.
right? And people see this as a value of the organization, rather than a benefit that they're getting somehow. The second point that you made about how individuals in the HR professional can manage their own well-being, a by focusing actively, and your four box quadrant approach of balancing everything out, and also setting boundaries and prioritizing things, and building that support system. And then on the organization side, you spoke about how to use communication both up and down, but also getting buy-in from the employees themselves to make sure that these programs become successful. And then also some challenges that might come about while implementing these programs, and how to bring in expertise from outside at the right time. So, thank you very much, Tanuka, for this time and your inputs. And I'm sure this will be a conversation we will continue with you and others. Just to wrap up, we are going to launch our formal survey on HR well-being very soon. So we invite all of you to join and contribute with your ideas, inputs. Secondly, we are also hosting this conversation every Thursday. So if you want to recommend anybody to come in, or you want to nominate yourself as a speaker, please feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to have you on this. And finally, as we come to your city, we are moving away from, we are going from one city to other. We are going to have a in-person meeting fairly soon in Mumbai. So we would invite everybody who's based in Mumbai to come join us during those conversations. Um, Thanks again, Tanuka, for your time, and thank you everyone for joining in the comments and sharing your views and questions.
Thank you for hosting me, Ashwin. This was indeed a pleasure.
Sure. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.